was running a UFO group in D-side, so I had a lot of people very interested in UFOs with me, and a team ready to go with all sorts of equipment and so on. When all of a sudden, I pick a newspaper up one day, I think it was the Daily Express actually, and there's this article, Strange Debris from the Sky, and it tells of a story of a farmer down there near Aberystwyth, on a farm at Llanilla. And this farmer claims that he went out one morning and found all this strange debris on his land. Well, obviously it had connotations to me of Roswell, and I'm thinking strange metallic debris spread all over fields. So immediately I got a small team together and we headed off. We spoke to the farmer on the telephone, and this very nice gentleman, Irwell, was really helpful, and he said, come down by all means. And we did, and when we went down there, he led us out from the farm and he took us out across these fields and he said, here before me in the morning, spread out over 4 fields, was metal fragments, metal plate, all convex shaped and glistening metal foil all over the place, spread over an entire 4-field area. Obviously when I got there was no metal, because as he explained, that morning he got up and found the fragments and immediately rang the police, suspecting that he'd had a plane crash on his land. The police arrived and duly they walk around and they examine the fields, and obviously they can't be of a lot of help. They recognise that there's this metal foil there, so they contact the crash retrieval, RAF crash retrieval. Gentlemen arrive from that and they walk over the land hearing the same story and examining this material and saying to each other, gosh, this isn't an aeroplane, we don't really know what it is. So they leave all this evidence in place, and much later that same day there's arrival of people from the Ministry of Defence. Now there are plainclothes people here directing uniformed officers. They've got all sorts of equipment, and in the words of Mr. Irwell himself, he said, it's like a scene here from James Bond. They've got lights all over the place, it's barricaded off, and they're out there collecting these pieces of material. Well, by the next morning, when Irwell got up to see to his lambs and so on, he went out there and it was gone. Every piece of metal and the MOD, completely gone. Much later, we arrived as a team to investigate. Obviously, they hadn't left a fragment anywhere. We searched the fields, we were unable to find any of it at all. In fact, the 3 people that were with me were really despairing in the end. You can imagine how excited we were, the chance of finding some of this debris. So I said to my colleagues, I said, there's no way, I don't care how good they are, the MOD and what they used, it would be very, very difficult to clear the forest that adjoined the land. So we set off amongst the branches and the trees and so on, and it wasn't long before we started to find strange fragments of this metal. And we recovered a number of pieces of this. You could see clearly where to look, because there was a line right through the top of this wood, or this forest if you like, where all the treetops had been sheared off, probably to a width of about 20 odd feet. And all the tops of these trees were scattered straight in a line right across this field. So it was easy to find where we needed to look. And we came away with this material. Obviously we planned to go back with more people and make a more thorough search, taking more equipment with us. Well, you will not believe this, but that very same week I had another phone call from the farmer, and he said, you're still welcome to come down and do your research and so on, but you might be wasting your time. So I said, well, how's that then? He said, well, you know that forest, as I'm speaking to you, they're actually removing it. I said, pardon, you're removing a forest? Yes, he said. So I contact the Forestry Commission and say, would you like to tell me why you're removing the forest? And a Forestry Commission person, and it sounded as if he was smiling, although obviously I couldn't see him on the telephone, he said, well, it's wind damage, you know. And I said, wind damage? You usually remove a forest for wind damage. No, he said, but we're removing this one. So I took it from that, obviously, that the Ministry of Defence had decided that the best way to remove any evidence in the forest was to take the trees away. And that's exactly what they did.
Or is this just going to turn into another story of strange noises, vanished evidence and weird lights in the sky.
If you'd just like to come this way, I've got some of the pieces here to show you. And there it is. As you can see, this large piece is almost like shattered glass around the edge. In fact, the only straight part of it is where we've had to cut samples for testing. On top of this grey material, this resin material, stood this sort of honeycombed metal. A sample of that in the case there that you can see, almost like tin foil, giving it enormous strength across the outside. So if you can imagine, we've got this material sandwiched between two plates. You'll notice that it's all completely shattered around the edges, almost like shattered glass. Well, as a matter of fact, I've got a small sample of the material here. On the one side, as you can see, it's a green colour, and on the other side it's a grey colour. The grey colour is some kind of resin that's not been properly identified yet, and obviously there's this duralumin in between. You notice that all the edges of the material look as if it's broken glass, it's shattered. The only straight edge, in fact, is the one that I've actually cut to take samples from. All the pieces are of a slightly concave nature, indicating that this has either exploded or imploded at some time. What's interesting though is the strength of this material. It's extremely strong, given that it's so light. Very, very strong. I can just bend it or flex it, but it would take quite a serious amount of effort to put a crease into it. I think you'll agree with me, that is extremely unusual. On the side that you can see that's grey, where the resin was, attached to this there was honeycombed metal foil that resembles baking foil, but all neatly honeycombed, and obviously the two pieces of metal went either side, sandwiching this honeycomb between them. The result is, of course, extremely stronger material that can't even be crushed, and yet extremely light at the same time. Quite incredible construction, really. Well, he was very, very clever, because
there's a story attached to this, so I suppose I should really tell the story. That is a keyring. Mounted at the back of this magnifying glass is a keyring, and he had 100 of those keyrings produced. The reason being, word got out through the authorities, probably through the farmer whose land the UFO crashed on. Word got out to the authorities that pieces of something had been recovered. And the classic thing is you hear of these big black cars pulling up with all the windows blacked out, you know, the doors open and the gentlemen get out and they're all in black with dark sunglasses, you know, and passes hanging, you know. There is a measure of truth in that, because these guys actually did turn up and came knocking on Gary's door. But Gary's answer was, okay, I'll do you a deal. And I thought this was incredibly clever. His answer was, I've produced 100 of these keyrings, he said, with fragments of the UFO in, and scattered them amongst people all over the UK. And the deal with the men in black was very simple. If you don't come after my pieces, I won't tell these 100 people to give their pieces to the media. And that was 25 years ago. So 25 years ago there were 100 of these little keyrings knocking around, and of course the gentleman, the men in black, thought, okay, there's nothing we can do, the truth is out there, it's got out, you know, he's allowed these pieces out, we can't possibly get all 100 pieces back because they're scattered around people that we don't know. And they literally, in silence, got back in the car, drove off, and were never seen again. But as I said, that was 25 years ago. The atmosphere has considerably changed now in the UFO community. And I was fortunate enough to acquire one of the pieces, so there it is. I don't know if anyone can actually see that.
Now, following that, obviously we were very curious with these pieces of metal that we'd recovered to find out what they were. And we were very lucky in the end to have someone who was a foremost metallurgist to take these pieces and investigate them. This person is associated with the aerospace industry and therefore had all the facilities to go ahead and do this sort of research. Well, eventually I got a report back. I must admit that most of it went clean over the top of my head. I'm not a metallurgist myself, but the gist of it is that the metal is some form of duralumin, which is not inconsistent with the kind of thing that you build fighter aircraft from. But there were strange anomalies in it that interested these people. They were talking about a strangeness to it. Its strength to volume ratio was extremely high. And also they were talking about a sort of pure alloy. Now you can get a pure alloy, I'm not quite sure, but the purity of it interested them. They were utterly convinced that they knew no one that could make this metal, and they were very much obviously like to make it themselves. They thought this was just the stuff we ought to be making aeroplanes out of. The result of it was that we had to settle for that information, and to this day nothing else has occurred that would indicate it's anything other than that, although we have had separate tests done on a few occasions. It also had some kind of strange resin on one side of it. The nature of this has not been fully analysed, although we are aware of some of the chemicals that it's composed of. And I'm told that the colour, this coloration that was on one side of it, is not an aerodynamic material. From that day to this, it still remains unidentified. No aircraft was missing, no pilots were missing, no mechanical things were found on the site associated with. There were no rivets in the construction of any of this material, and whatever this strange thing was that flew that night over that farm, it managed to explode all this material, cover 4 fields with it, and then fly off again undisturbed, it appears. It's quite remarkable, and as this has not been identified in the last 20 odd years, we can only conclude, and this is as far as I'm happy to go, that this remains debris from a UFO, an unidentified flying object.
Everything